So tomorrow is your benchmark 3 phase 1. So it's just the constructor response. Today we're reviewing a lot of the stuff that's going to be on that benchmark. So make sure you're paying attention so you're able to access the documents that we're going to use tomorrow. So it's going to be about Andrew Jackson. But I'm not going to tell you what exactly the documents are about. You need to have this background knowledge so you can get them. So before Andrew Jackson came into politics, politics was controlled almost only by rich people. George Washington had been rich. Sam Adams had been rich. All of those people, maybe they started off poor, but by the time that they controlled politics, it was the rich. Jackson, on the other hand, was completely different. He was a popular hero with commoners, common people being the poorer people, the regular people. And the reason why was because he had won the Battle of New Orleans and he had grown up poor. So he was known for protecting America, for being this hero of the big Battle of New Orleans. And he was known for also being a regular guy, somebody who grew up in Tennessee in the middle of America on like a homestead, not a big plantation. He didn't own slaves. Or at the beginning of his life, he didn't own lots of land. He was a regular guy. So in his first election, it was really close. You can see Jackson with the electoral vote, he got 38%, which was just enough for him to beat out the other guys. But then in his second election, after he had done some things as president, he really won by a landslide. He got 68% of the electoral vote. All of those states in yellow all voted for Andrew Jackson. As you can see, the yellow Jackson, they all voted for him. Only a few states in the Northeast did not. Oh, and good point, actually. These states in the Northeast, those were the richest states. So that was where all the rich people who had controlled politics before, they were the ones who were voting against Jackson. And these were the people who were going west, who were taking land, who were becoming farmers and all that. Those were the people who were voting for Andrew Jackson. So when he got inaugurated, he created something called the Kitchen Cabinet. And that was just a bunch of advisors. And it was really like the first cabinet of people who helped out the president. Here's a picture of his kitchen cabinet down there. They were just guys who were helping him out, making decisions. He also wanted to fight against the national bank because he said it worked for rich people. So he was all against the rich people, all for the poor people. So he was president from 1828 to 1836. He was really forceful, and anybody who disagreed with him, he would just shove him out of the way. He didn't want to listen to him. He wanted everything to be done his way. And one of the ways that he got that done was he would give all the government jobs just to his friends. So that is called the spoils system, where he gave the jobs to his friends. And that was a really big way that he was making sure he controlled politics all across the US. So check out this cartoon to see if you can figure out what it's trying to say about Andrew Jackson. Exactly, right? To the victors, the spoils. They're saying he's giving these jobs away. He's plundering. If you read that right here, you've got bribery. He's giving people jobs so they vote for him and so they help him out. So his friends are the ones who control politics. You can also see he's sitting on a pig, which is kind of a dirty animal in what we think of. So they're really not saying nice things about Jackson, saying he's corrupting politics. Who do you think probably drew this? Yeah, probably a rich person, not a poor person, because they weren't voting for Jackson. So then one of his most famous or infamous acts was called the Indian Removal Act. And what that resulted in was the removal of Native Americans to make room for white settlers. He didn't say, though, that he was trying to make room for whites. He was saying that he wanted the Indians to be able to live on their own and be all nice and have their own lives and have their own traditions and all that stuff where they were. But really what he was doing was making room for white people to come in and take their land. So when he passed the Indian Removal Act, it ended up being actually really, really controversial because the Supreme Court in the decision Worcester versus Georgia had told him that that was illegal. So the Supreme Court, you've got these checks and balances. You've got the Supreme Court has judicial review, and they said, no, Andrew Jackson, you cannot do that. But he decides not to listen to the Supreme Court. He even said, and this is a quote right here, he said, John Marshall has made his decision. Now let him enforce it. And if you remember, it's the job of the president to enforce the decision. It's the job of the executive branch. The judicial branch doesn't actually have the power to enforce decisions. That's only the executive. So when he ignores the Supreme Court and does the Indian Removal Act, kicks the Indians out on the Trail of Tears anyway, this is going to cause a really big disagreement in government. So many people were worried that Jackson was overstepping his power as president and breaking the law. So if you look at this picture, what do you think they're trying to tell you about Andrew Jackson? Exactly. They're saying he's acting like a king. He's not listening to checks and balances. He's not listening to the Supreme Court. So he's really pushing us in the wrong direction. And if you look closely down here at the bottom, he's stepping on a broken up version of the Constitution. So they're saying he's not listening to the Constitution. He's doing his own thing. He's acting like a king. Other people, though, especially white settlers, were very happy to take over Indian land. So they were the ones who were benefiting from this because they were getting free land. They were being able to move onto their own homes. And so they didn't want the people that they elected, their representatives, to impeach Jackson. So Jackson never got impeached for that. Nothing ever happened to him. It was only there was this disagreement and this public argument about it. So here's an image of the Trail of Tears, just so you remember what was happening. And think also about all the other times that Native Americans were poorly treated in American history. It was not just the Trail of Tears. It was tons and tons of Native Americans being moved onto reservations at other times. It were times that the United States would sign treaties with Native Americans and then break them. There were times when they would just pick up whole villages and move them without even asking at all. So it's a whole history of the way that Native Americans have been treated. And last, here is a map of the Trail of Tears. So you can see all the different places that they were going from. Georgia, that's the state right here. That's the one that the Supreme Court said, no, you can't take the Native Americans off of there. And Andrew Jackson did anyway. So check out these couple review questions and see how much you know for tomorrow. Good luck.